We're following an unfolding story in Georgia at this time. A shelter in Atlanta lost control of the infected individuals within and sent out a distress call for assistance. SWAT arrived at the location and were presented with multiple infected individuals, requiring a rescue into the shelter itself of the very SWAT team that first breached the area. The rescue was performed by the National Guard helicopters that pierced the sky at the border of Atlanta proper in the early morning hours. Multiple cameras were able to capture the incident as it unfolded, and gunfire echoed through the morning hours. Sharing the occurrence on social media brought attention of the world to the city, echoing statements that seemed to question if this was a war of the world scenario. The chief held a press conference shortly after the conclusion as dawn began to break over the scene, but had few answers. Our reporter Warren Orias is on scene.
Thanks. We're here at the shelter on the southern border of Atlanta, the location of an incredible scene in the late hours of last night. The fire behind me still rages from where SWAT and military launched smoke grenades that ignited dry grass, as I'm being told, and bodies can still be seen. Even if you were allowed in, there's not enough blankets to cover them all up. Firefighters have not been allowed into the area as yet until the site is deemed completely clear of infected. From time to time, the sounds of gunshots can be heard, and the thought of what they're shooting at can't be described on this broadcast. This shelter, what used to be an abandoned industrial building, was the location of an unprecedented mobilization last night. A passerby witnessed what they called a horde of infected individuals surrounding the building. Some described it in the hundreds. They called for police that arrived and were quickly overwhelmed, unable to reach the building. Fearing that they were survivors inside, the SWAT team was mobilized. They attempted a forward breach of the structure, but were themselves caught up inside and called for evacuation. It was deemed that the best escape was from the roof, where National Guard helicopters had a dramatic rescue from their teams that were dispatched to gather up the few survivors, aided by the SWAT themselves. The sheriff came out a short while ago and relayed all this information. There's no word on the loss of life, but it's confirmed that multiple SWAT members were killed in the assault, but were able to save at least 5 of the staff scientists that were working at the shelter. They were driven from the scene mere moments ago without life-threatening injuries. It's possible that over 100 individuals lost their lives, many infected by what is being called PACE, an infection that debilitates the brain of its victims and is being described as something between rabies and mad cow disease. This has brought up a great deal of questions about what is being uncovered here, and the sheriff did bring it up during the press conference, such as why were so many infected being, in his words, stored here, which seemed an odd way of describing them. Did the attackers come from other locations, or were they just already in the building? We don't have the specifics at this time. And also statements of deplorable conditions inside. Some SWAT members were describing as looking like a meat market, and another member of the team was heard saying, "They just keep coming at us, no matter what we do." It's an absolutely horrifying thought. The sheriff said many of the individuals had no identification and had signs they had been experimented on. It really has brought into question exactly what was going on here. It's important to explain that yesterday evening this was a fully functioning infection shelter where individuals had stated they brought family members here for treatment who had potentially contracted the illness. Loved ones are now questioning what happened to their loved ones and if any treatment actually occurred here at all. The sheriff stated he would get to the bottom of the information as soon as the area was deemed clear and safe, and would inform us of any things that came forward. It appeared now that federal resources have just arrived as well to assist, as well as civil defense. So we hope to keep you updated as things unfold.
Such a horrifying story coming out of Atlanta today. We wish the safe return of all those infected by this awful illness and hope they find some sort of treatment soon. In other news, all campaigning by the candidates has stopped as the president was recalled to the White House to deal with this emerging issue.